As you know, I see Pirsig's philosophy everywhere because more than any other theory of philosophy I personally experienced, it scales best. It really gets to the bottom of things. So today I looked at my email and I was pleased to find that Jordan Peterson's next book is available on pre-order. And this is my email from ThinkSpot, which is Jordan Peterson's, I guess you could call it, publishing platform, which his work and other people's work are on that platform. And there's a short essay describing what I think is the focus of the book, considering its title, which is Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. So this is a short essay that I'm only going to read part of to make a point. The great analytical psychologist Carl Jung believed that the process by which the absolute unknown, chaos, was transformed into order was not precisely cognitive and linguistic, not articulated in its first stages. What are its first stages? It's that pre-intellectual awareness of quality. Okay, later on he goes on to say, it could be said that knowledge grows as chaos, incomprehensible chaos, and is transformed into order. So think of Poincaré. Think of what emerges from the miasma of facts. Think about all the hypotheses, which are the best hypotheses. But this is only half the story. Order is that domain of experience where familiar actions produce desirable responses. Okay, we're talking about static patterns of value. The domain of experience, familiar actions produce desirable responses. That's why they're patterns. That's why they're patterns of value, static patterns of value. Order can become stultifying, however, crushing, deadening, oppressive, predictable, dull, lifeless, obsessive, colorless, woefully blind, self-satisfied, arrogant, and unchangeable. Think about all those situations that Pirsig has already described in Lila, specifically the cultural immune system, and other systems that he's given us examples of. For example, the Zuni, who didn't want to update their culture, and it took the Brujo to come in and transform their understanding of what they had to do to survive. But they wanted to just keep their culture going, and they would have been annihilated. Their system was too static. The Island Queen, which is just entertainment, where the singer sings the old standards, and there's never anything new, and people just are entertained by their static patterns of value are titillated and not transformed, and there's nothing new happening there. And other situations where holding on to rigid ways of thinking, like Rigel the Victorian and his rigid system of morality. So those are all the things that Pirsig has described. Those are some of the things that Pirsig just described and Jordan Peterson is describing. Sometimes, therefore, knowledge grown as order is demolished when it has become deadening. So that's dynamic quality updating. Sometimes dynamic quality has to destroy completely when something has become just way too stale. And in truth, every confrontation with something new is the death of an old preconception, an old static pattern of value, a revision of an old map, again, the editing and updating of an old story. So when Pirsig says analog upon analog, that's what he means. The analogs get updated with dynamic quality so that the true act of creative adaptation, says Jordan Peterson, is always partly the death of an anachronistic order and partly the admixture of the chaotic and revitalizing static patterns being updated with chaotic and revitalizing dynamic quality. It's a high wire act. It's the surfing of a giant wave. Surfing, okay, so think about gumption, think about flow state, think about being on the motorcycle. You're surfing a giant wave. When you line up with the quality track, when your motorcycle is 95 miles an hour and there's no one else on the road, and you're in absolute in-the-moment elated state. So I also see yesterday Jordan Peterson put out a video to announce his new book in which he elaborates on this essay with a longer reading, which of course explores our relationship with chaos and order, this book being more focused on cultivating and managing chaos rather than keeping chaos at bay and and bringing order into the chaos. Obviously, I'm going to further suggest that this updated way of thinking, which is based on moving away from a scientific substance-based understanding of truth, and that scientific substance-based understanding of truth gave us the illusion that certainty was possible. And this is moving toward more a value-based understanding of truth. And this is what we need going forth. We need to develop that sense of truth within ourselves, because we can no longer fully rely on external sources for the truth. We're going to have to understand quality to make decisions. We're going to have to harness that quality within us. We're going to have to get on the track ourselves, because the data that we're processing now has become too unmoored from its source. If you look at my last video, Paul Go said what happens is when you interpret phenomena into data, into numbers, those numbers, especially if they don't represent reality, if they've been motivated somehow, if the observation, if the science is poor, or if the observations are motivated or biased, then those numbers actually become meaningless entities that just float around. That's what I was trying to say in my last video. And then you can manipulate those any way you want to get what you want. So if that data is really unmoored from its source, and you can't refer back to that source in a straight line of quality, and confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance reign supreme in a desperate grasp for certainty that subject-object metaphysics can no longer pretend to provide. Subject-object metaphysics is a smaller ruler who is wearing a lot less than you thought. And there's another part that we've been missing. Jordan Peterson is looking at chaos, so he's looking in this direction for what's missing. How do we use and harness chaos in a way with order that puts us in balance, that puts us on the quality track? So this new way of thinking that takes in, that upends the primacy of the subject-object, of the scientific, of the materialistic worldview, you can make more sense of things that are going on, like say COVID. In this way of thinking, you are likely not to be either draconian or reckless, but choose a way to live through this pandemic in which you take static caution when necessary, static quality, and dynamic risks when it's worth it. In one mode of the two modes, of the two ideologies that are prevailing during this pandemic, under one ideology, you're paranoidally following the cautious side of the argument, which is too much order. And in another mode, you are saying, screw it, I won't give up my liberty, and that's too much chaos. But we don't need either of these ideologies to tell us how to live. Not only valuing safety, not only valuing liberty, but better, valuing the fullness of life and allowing that quality to help us make the many decisions we're going to need to make as we manage this, what seems to be an endless pandemic. And maybe understanding that this phenomenon will yield quality if we look for it, because this is a transformational event. Any event that's dire like this is also transformational, just like the wars resulted in the most amazing innovations, like penicillin, for example, just to name one of the many. And if we look for quality during this time, we're going to see it emerging, and then we can build on it as it does. This is what Jordan Peterson is about, and this is what Pirsig is about: managing chaos, or the dynamic, and allowing it to transform, and harnessing order or static when it's useful, and allowing the one to build upon the other. In some cases, dynamic quality is going to have to destroy static patterns. But the best case scenario is when you build on the static patterns and then ratchet up to a whole new level. In terms of our consciousness, our understanding of reality, Jordan Peterson is proposing a ratcheting up. He'll probably be one of the centers of this movement to evolve away from this strict left hemisphere enlightenment, subject-object, materialist way of looking at things, and toward one that equally focuses on the right hemisphere, the spirituality, the art, the more holistic way of understanding. There are many people in this corner who are on this track, and I've mentioned many of them before. People who are trying to ratchet up from what's been our way of thinking for so long since the Enlightenment. But of course, Pirsig would argue that it was before that. The origins are way before that. And many others are following this path toward integration of the value that was lost when we decided that if something isn't measurable, it doesn't exist. When we replace substance, let's just say atoms, and everything's built out of atoms, everything's built out of particles maybe. When we replace that with value, all phenomena are equally real, and we can view all these phenomena and in some cases, these very, very, very static patterns of value. These phenomena are objects, are tangible objects. We can view all this through the lens of quality. It's a point of view that sees great art as equal in value to a formidable scientific discovery. Or, as Jordan Peterson proposes, we need to be able to handle chaos well. We need to become comfortable with uncertainty and approach it voluntarily. Pirsig would say, with peace of mind. And remember, truth is not a static pattern. Truth itself is not a static pattern, but a moment of clarity that we feel in our soul, the moment we become aware of quality. And it is that feeling that will tell us how to proceed, and we need to know how to recognize it. It's important to get back some of what we've lost. If you're looking at updating old patterns, there's an old pattern we need to reintegrate. And many would say since before the Enlightenment, but Pirsig, of course, would say back to ancient Greece, we need to reclaim what he calls arete, excellence. And who knows what could happen if we change our quest from one towards certainty to one towards quality. I propose that if we are going to live in this new space, trying to do something about making sense in a better way of what's going on in this world, then Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and Lila and the work of Pirsig in general need to be dusted off and reintegrated as incredibly useful tools and as an underlying metaphysics for this evolution of consciousness. I suggest you prepare yourself by reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and Lila so you're ready when Jordan's book comes out next March. So I hope that made sense, and I'll see you next time.